What's going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving you a review for M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. So this is going to be a non-spoiler review, so don't be expecting any spoilers in this video. I just went to go see it, and M. Night Shyamalan has been actually one of my favorite directors for a while. I mean, I absolutely love The Sixth Sense and Signs especially. There's a couple other movies that he's done that I've also loved, but for the most part, those are the two ones that just really showed me that this man knows what he's doing. He knows how to make a movie, and I'm always going to support his work going forward because of that. So when I went to go see Trap, I really wasn't sure exactly what to expect. Obviously, I've seen the trailers, and so I was like, okay, I get the general premise here, but I wasn't really sure exactly what it was going to be like, because usually his movies aren't really what they're presented as in the marketing. Sometimes they get really crazy and it becomes something very different later on, which is kind of how I felt about Knock at the Cabin. Now, as we always do with these reviews, let's start off with the positives and then we'll get to the negatives later, and then we'll give it a rating out of 10. So starting off with the positives, the first big thing is M. Night's directing here is outstanding. This might be his best looking movie to date. I don't think it's his best movie, you know, let's not get that far, but it is probably his best looking movie. And I think a big part of that, I'm not going to say has nothing to do with M. Night. I'm sure it has a lot to do with M. Night as well, but it also probably has to do with the cinematographer here, who is Semubi Mukti-Prime. I'm probably saying that name wrong, but he is the cinematographer. He did a lot of other movies such as Challengers, Call Me By Your Name, the Suspiria remake. So he's someone who's definitely well known as being a really solid cinematographer, and you can tell this movie's cinematography is outstanding. But obviously, where the camera's placed, the intimacy in the dialogue, like the fact that he puts the camera so close up into people's faces during the dialogue scenes, and then he does this cool thing where he kind of like splits between each of their faces one at a time, which a lot of movies don't do. A lot of movies like to, you know, keep the camera on both of them at the same time or whatever it may be, but the way they do it here makes it really intimate, and you really stay focused on the character of Cooper here, who is the main character you are following, played by Josh Hartnett. And jumping into the next point I want to talk about, yes, Josh Hartnett's acting is phenomenal. This might be, I mean, I haven't seen him in a lot of movies, but I do think this is his best movie I've ever seen him in. He is so damn good here. The acting is outstanding. Just to give like a general synopsis of this movie without giving too much away, because I do think this is the type of movie where you want to go into it not knowing too much. It is about this character Cooper, who is a father. He has a daughter there, and he's bringing her to this concert with this singer named Lady Raven, and the singer is played by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, Salika Shyamalan. She's this really popular singer, and by the way, she's got great music. Salika Shyamalan is actually a singer herself. She actually has music, and yes, she has some fantastic music in this movie. There's a lot of great songs that she plays, and so you have this character here who is this singer. She's got all these fans, and this man just takes his daughter to the concert, but without anyone knowing, they have this whole plan set up. It's basically a trap, which is why the movie's called Trap. There's this whole trap set up for this serial killer, because there's this big serial killer out there named the Butcher, and they're trying to capture him because they know that he's coming to this concert, and they don't know exactly what he looks like. They don't know much about him other than just some small details, but they're trying to catch him. So they're really trying to just find and question as many men as they can possibly question, because that's the very least they know. They know he's a man, so they can question as many as they can and hope that they can get enough information. And they do have enough information to the point where questioning this killer will likely lead them to who it actually is. So Josh Hartnett's character Cooper is kind of going through this whole thing where he's just trying to avoid the police at all costs. And if you've seen the trailer, you know why. And in a lot of ways, it almost plays out like a video game, which I think is so cool. If you've ever played one of the Hitman games, it definitely reminded me of that, where he's just kind of like going through different corridors, trying to find different like key cards to get him into different sections of this concert venue. And you know, it's helpful because he's trying to either just get information on what's going on with the situation, trying to find out how to escape, and it is so entertaining. It is so interesting to see him do all this. And the reason it works so well, first of all, like I said before, Josh Hartnett's acting is phenomenal. So when you're following this character, you are always entertained by him and his maneuvers and his conversations with random characters. Like, all of it is just so good. But what also really works is just the fact that he's a really smart character. Like, that is what makes this work. If this was a dumb character, this movie would not be entertaining. But you are dealing with a really smart, like almost Walter White type character. He's not similar to Walter White in any other way. They're just smart. He's just very smart, right? And that is fun to watch because you get to see these really crazy things. And sometimes he just gets lucky, sure. But a lot of it just has to do with just him being smart, thinking, quickly, thinking right off the top of his head, what could he do to possibly help him in the situation? And he's not the smartest person ever, but he's definitely smart enough to the point where he can definitely get himself out of certain situations. And that is entertaining to watch through and through. And I will say the movie is surprisingly hilarious sometimes. And I don't know what it is about M. Night's movies. Sometimes he just likes to throw in some comedy here and there, and it really works. But sometimes the comedy almost feels unintentional, which is weird. I don't know what it is. There was some moments later in the movie, especially in the third act, where it felt really campy and it kind of made it comedic. And again, I don't really know if that was intentional or not, but it worked for me, so I'll definitely throw that as a positive. I also just loved the themes of this movie. Like, there are so many interesting conversations to have from what this movie is about. In a lot of ways, it's about our biases and how our biases completely blind us to who people truly are. And a lot of that has to do with just, you don't really expect certain people to do certain things. If you have a nice interaction with someone, you're never going to assume they're this person, even if it's like right there in front of you. And that theme is pretty present throughout the entire film. They even kind of make a joke about it later in the movie, sort of. But I don't know, I thought it was really interesting just showing that, because it's a very real thing. It's something people deal with on the regular. Like, there's very commonly situations where you don't expect someone to be like a certain way and then they end up turning out that way, and you would have never expected that in a million years. And yeah, it's because of our biases. We don't expect that because we've had positive interactions with that person. But it's not a perfect movie, so let's get into the negatives. The first thing I want to mention is something I feel like I've said for a lot of movies, but this is just that there's some moments that are kind of hard to believe. Like, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Some moments where you're wondering, like, how did nobody see that character do that? Or how did nobody catch this person doing this? And it's just one of those things you kind of just have to suspend your disbelief. And it is a very common filmmaking technique, because a lot of times filmmakers will assume if the audience can't see it themselves on the screen, then we shouldn't question it. But I don't really like that personally. Like, I'm gonna question it no matter what. I'm thinking of this movie as if it's real life. That's just kind of naturally what we do as humans. We're watching this, we're kind of treating it like it's an actual thing, and that's just kind of how you get immersed into the movie. And if you want to keep that immersion, sometimes it's important to make sure that even if it's happening off screen, you probably want to make sure it at least feels believable, or else people are going to question how the hell that was possible. And that's just kind of what happened a couple times in this movie. It wasn't like the biggest deal ever. It was never like a really big scene, but it was just small things that just kind of added up over time. And I kept thinking, like, they could have reworked the scene. All you have to do is just take away a couple extras in the background, move them up somewhere else, and then I feel like it could have worked out just fine, but they just didn't do that. So there was a couple moments like that I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that. And although I really liked the character of Cooper here, there were some things that I kind of wanted them to lean a little bit more into, and by the end of the movie, I don't feel like they leaned enough into it. And a lot of it had to do with his relationship with his daughter. They did a couple of really nice moments between them where they were just talking, having a conversation, and you could tell that he does care a lot about his daughter. But I kept feeling like I want a little bit more out of that. I want to really learn more about this character, his motivations related to his daughter. And I can't really say much more without spoiling stuff, but I just don't feel like they did that properly in the end. But the character is still incredibly interesting, and you'll see what I mean. Like, you're gonna find this character to be a very fascinating person by the end of the movie. But there was just some things, especially in terms of his relationship with his daughter, that I just wanted to see just a little bit more of, and I kind of felt a little disappointed with that by the end. And I also think my expectations of a usual Shyamalan film kind of messed me up a little bit in this movie, because although yes, it does feel like a M. Night Shyamalan movie through and through, there was certain things that I feel like it really didn't have that his movies usually do, which to me kind of almost set my expectations a little bit weirdly, you know what I mean? So I feel like it would have been better just going into it and not having those expectations, but I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just gonna stop talking there. But that is something to think about when watching this movie. Don't really view it as a typical M. Night movie when you're going into it, because trust me, it is very different. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's just important to set your expectations properly. With that being said, I would give this movie a solid 8 out of 10 rating. I think this is like the most typical example of an 8 out of 10 movie. It's a very solid 8 out of 10. It's just good. Like, I don't know. That's not much more to say there. I really enjoyed it. and I definitely recommend going to see it in the theaters as soon as you possibly can. So I will see you guys all in my next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.